Hi, my name is Lynette, and this is why he is greater than I. First of all, I have a verse I want to read. It is 1 Peter 5, 2 through 4. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve, not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples of the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of your glory that will never fade away. It'll make sense a little bit later why that verse is relevant. But my story starts with I was going through a time of life when everything was changing. It's that time that people my age go through when their kids grow up and they begin to leave the nest, and in people on Kauai's lives, they leave the island, so it can be kind of a traumatic time. And so we had just had a great season of life where we had tons of people in our lives, kids in our lives, that all at the same moment were moving away, going to college, moving on, and it was kind of traumatic for me especially. I didn't know it at the time, but I was kind of going through something traumatic. And during that time, Corey Howitt came to us, and he brought a young man over because he was leaving the island to go to Multnomah Bible School. And he brought him over, and we kind of knew what he was doing. He had led him to Christ, and he was leaving now, and so he needed somebody to mentor and kind of disciple him as he was gone. So he brought him over and told him, hang out with these people, be with these people. And so that's exactly what he did. He was in high school, and just about every day he would come over and he would sit on my couch, or he'd sit at the dining room table. But he was kind of uncommunicative, and he didn't really want to talk, and he just seemed a little shut down. And I was kind of frustrated with him. I was frustrated by my lack of ability to kind of get through and kind of have a relationship with him. And it was starting to kind of make me really frustrated. And one day I left to go to Costco, and I pray when I'm in the car. And so in the car, as I was on my way to Costco, I was praying, Lord, I just don't know why this kid is in our life. He just sits around and he doesn't talk, and I just don't understand what you're doing and why you have him here. And I just am frustrated, and I was just kind of venting to the Lord. And I felt like, okay, yeah, I know what you want me to do. You want me to love him. Okay, I'm gonna love him. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna love him. So I was driving along on the way to Costco, and almost there, and I just kind of heard a whispering from the Lord that, yeah, you're gonna love him. That's what you're supposed to do. But what's really gonna happen is you're really gonna love him, which sounds exactly the same, but it was completely different. What the Lord was saying to me was, I was going to love this guy. He was going to be an important person in my life. And so I just believed him at that point. I just said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to choose to believe what you said, which is this guy's going to be an important part of my life, and I'm just going to love him. And so it kind of changed everything in my thinking. And so got my groceries, loaded them up, went back home. Michael was still there, sitting there kind of non-communicative. I had him help me empty the car and bring up the groceries, and was unloading things into the refrigerator. And I just told him, I said, on the way to Costco today, God told me, I hate it when people say that, you could correct that. I just heard God say that I'm just going to love you. And I believe him. I'm just going to love you. And I think you're going to be an important part of our life. And he just kind of smiled and didn't say much. But from that point on, I noticed a change. He kind of would talk more. He would share more. And then it didn't take very long at all where he was completely open with us and shared his story. And he ended up being a huge part of our life. And he ended up being a son to us, and still is a son to us. And I just about missed it because I was so worried about the obligation of doing what God wanted that I missed the privilege of being a part of God's process. And so I'm going to read the same verse that I read in the beginning in the Message because it says it even more interestingly. Here's my concern, that you care for God's flock with all the diligence of a shepherd, not because you have to, but because you want to please God. Not calculating what you can get out of it, but by acting spontaneously, not bossily telling what others to do, but tenderly showing them the way. For when God, who is the best shepherd of all, comes out in the open with his rule, he'll see that you've done it right and commend you lavishly. So what I learned is there's a right way to do what I was doing, not out of obligation, but out of love for Christ. And I was caught up in an obligation thinking, and what Christ wanted was for me to just join him in what he was doing and be excited about this relationship that he had put in front of me. And when I was able to do that, when I was able to see from his perspective, when he said, "You're going to love him," it just changed everything. And the relationship blossomed. It is one of the most important relationships that we have now. And we got to go to his wedding, and he got married in the last few months. And we were doing the mother-son dance, and I was sort of reflecting on the last 4 or 5 years together and all that God has done in his life. Amazing things, where he went from dropping out of school to flunking out of school to graduating, and just all the amazing things that God did in his heart, changing his heart, and being asked to go back to school and speak about what the Lord had done to change his trajectory, and him being brave enough to ask if he could include Christ in that talk, and them saying yes to that. It's all been an amazing thing, and I'm so glad that I listened to the Lord and remembered that his ways are greater than ours.